For 63 years, I hated a boy who was actually my own son. And I loved, with everything I had, a child who shared not a single drop of my blood. My husband took that secret to his grave, but he couldn't hide it forever. I found the papers, and what I read destroyed me completely. My name doesn't matter anymore. What matters is the truth I should have known 63 years ago, and the truth I was too blind, too trusting, too naive to ever question. I had 2 sons, or so I believed, Thomas and Daniel, born just 8 months apart, 2 little boys who filled our small house with noise and light. But even from the very beginning, something never felt right. And I buried that feeling. God help me, I buried it deep. When I brought Thomas home from the hospital, he was perfect. Rosy cheeks, blue eyes, a tuft of golden hair just like my husband Gerald's. Gerald wept when he held him. I had never seen that man cry before in my life. He held Thomas like he was made of the most precious glass in the world. I remember thinking, this is it. This is what love looks like. But 8 months later, when I brought Daniel home, Gerald barely looked at him. Daniel was different from the moment he arrived. Dark hair, dark eyes, an olive complexion that neither Gerald nor I could explain. My mother-in-law said it was a throwback gene. Gerald said nothing. He simply withdrew. He was cold to Daniel in a way I never understood. He never threw him in the air the way he did Thomas, never sat with him at bedtime, never called him son. I told myself Gerald was just tired, that some fathers took longer to bond. I made excuses for that man for 40 years. As the boys grew older, Gerald's favoritism became impossible to ignore. Thomas was given every opportunity: private school, tennis lessons, a car for his 16th birthday. Daniel was given hand-me-downs and silence. When Daniel brought home straight A's, Gerald glanced at the report card and set it down. When Thomas scraped by with C's, Gerald took him out for steak dinner. I argued with Gerald about it constantly. He always had the same answer: I treat them both the same. He looked me dead in the eyes and lied to me over and over again for decades. The worst moment of my life, before I found the papers, was the day I disowned Daniel. He was 26. He had come to us asking for help with a down payment on a house. Gerald refused. Daniel, who had always carried a quiet anger inside him, exploded. He said things to Gerald, things about the favoritism, the coldness, the years of neglect. And Gerald, with the cruelest calm I have ever witnessed, told Daniel he was ungrateful and unwanted. I stood there. I said nothing. I let my husband speak for me. And when Daniel walked out that door and never came back, I told myself he had chosen to leave. I convinced myself I had done nothing wrong. For decades, I heard nothing from Daniel. Thomas stayed close, married well, had children, visited every holiday. Gerald doted on Thomas's children the way he had doted on Thomas. And I, God forgive me, I let myself believe that was simply how life had unfolded, that Daniel's absence was his own doing. I grew old with a half-empty heart and told myself it was his fault. I sent one letter when he turned 40. It came back unopened. I told myself he was the one who had chosen silence. Gerald died on a Tuesday morning in March. Quietly, in his sleep, the way he had lived, without explanation, without apology. I was the one who went through his desk to find insurance documents. Instead, buried beneath a false bottom in the bottom drawer, I found a manila envelope. Inside were two things, a handwritten letter and a DNA paternity test from 1962, the year Daniel was born. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely hold the paper, but I read every single word, and my world collapsed. The DNA test was ordered by Gerald himself, months after Daniel was born. The results were clear. Daniel was 100% Gerald's biological son, and Thomas, my golden-haired Thomas, my beloved firstborn, was not. The letter was from a nurse at the hospital where both boys were born, a nurse Gerald had been having an affair with. She had given birth to a boy on the same ward 2 days before I delivered Daniel, and Gerald, my husband, had switched the babies. He had taken her son and placed him in my arms, and he had given our son away to be raised by another woman. I sat on the floor of Gerald's study for 3 hours. I could not move. Every memory I had of my life was rewriting itself before my eyes. Every cold look Gerald had given Daniel suddenly made hideous sense. Gerald had spent 60 years punishing his own biological son for the crime of existing, for being the proof of the family he had tried to bury. And Thomas, sweet Thomas, who had no idea, had been the biological child of another woman entirely. I had loved him completely. I had given him everything. And Daniel, my true son, my blood, I had let walk out of my life forever. I hired a private investigator to find Daniel. It took 4 months. He was living in Portland, Oregon, retired. He had a wife, 2 daughters, and 3 grandchildren. He had built a full, beautiful life. Without me, without Gerald, without any of us. When the investigator handed me a photograph of Daniel at a backyard barbecue, laughing with his grandchildren, I wept for 2 days straight. He looked like my father. He had my father's nose, my father's hands. How had I never seen it? How had I spent 60 years not seeing my own reflection in my own child's face? I wrote Daniel a letter, 17 pages, handwritten. I told him everything, the DNA test, Gerald's affair, the swap, every act of cruelty I had witnessed and allowed, every moment I had failed to protect him, every excuse I had made for a man who deserved none. I told him I had no right to ask for forgiveness. I told him I only wanted him to know the truth, that he was wanted, that he was loved, that he was mine, and that I had been robbed of knowing that, and so had he. I mailed it on a Thursday. For 6 weeks, I heard nothing. On a Sunday evening in October, my phone rang. I almost didn't answer. I almost let it go to the machine. But something made me pick it up, and I heard a voice I hadn't heard in over 30 years say, "Mom?" Just that one word, just Mom. I couldn't speak. I just cried. And then, God bless him, he cried too. We stayed on that phone for 4 hours. He told me he had always known something was wrong, that he had spent his whole life feeling like a stranger in his own family. He didn't forgive me that night. He told me he needed time, but he called. He called me Mom, and that was enough to breathe again. I am 88 years old. I do not have many years left, perhaps not even many months. Daniel and I have spoken every week since that phone call. He came to visit me last spring with his youngest daughter, Elena, who has my mother's eyes. I held her hand, and I could not stop shaking. Thomas knows the truth now, too. He took it harder than anyone. He is not my blood, but I love him no less. He is innocent in all of this, as much a victim as Daniel or I. The 3 of us are piecing together something broken. It is slow, it is painful, but it is real. If there is one thing I want anyone who hears this story to take from it, it is this: do not stay silent to keep the peace. Do not let love for one person make you blind to your cruelty toward another. I let a man's lie become my own. I paid for that silence with my son's childhood, his happiness, and 30 years of his life. Gerald is gone, and I cannot punish him. I can only live for whatever time I have left, in the truth. And I can only pray that Daniel knows, in whatever way a mother's love can still reach across 60 lost years, that I am so deeply, terribly, profoundly sorry. That is my confession, all of it, every shameful, heartbreaking, irreversible piece of it. I carry it every single day. If this story moved you, if it made you hold your own children a little closer, or think of someone you may have let slip away, please give this video a like. It costs you nothing, and it means the world. And if you want to hear more stories like mine, true stories of secrets, of loss, of love discovered too late, please subscribe to this channel. There are so many of us out here carrying truths we were too afraid to speak. Thank you for listening to mine.